All right, everyone. Welcome back to our interactive session, which is gonna be so dope because we're gonna present our speaker Isabelle Boemeke, and I'm gonna give a little introduction because this is not about science or engineering, but more about the communication skills that modern influencers need to have in order to influence other people. And Isabelle is a Brazilian fashion model and the world's first nuclear energy influencer. And she created the persona Isodope for advocate for nuclear energy as a solution for climate change and energy inequality. I was long wondering about the nuclear influencers and how hard it is for them to start in this field, first as a first step takers, and second, it is hard to get subscribers since it's not as popular as fashion blogging, for example. And I've become familiar with Isabelle's work from LinkedIn post, which was commented by our professors from UC Berkeley, and it was basically telling, oh, this is what nuclear industry needs, a strong influencer who can basically convey and share vision about the industry in a very simple and elegant way. And this is what Isabelle did. She has a video about the face care routine and nuclear energy facts at the same time, which was very compelling way to deliver complex information. And I really like this. So I'll leave the stage for Isabelle for now, and we will have some Q&A right after. And I'll start with Q&A from questions we received on Instagram question poll yesterday. Isabelle?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Should we get this started? All right.
Yes.
All right, I'll share my screen. So, hi, everyone. Again, I'm Isabelle, but some of you might know me through my online persona, Isodope. For those of you who have no idea who I am or what I'm doing here, I'll show you a little video I've made.
Nuclear energy is clean energy. This is a plant. No, not this one. This one. Most power plants make electricity by heating water and creating steam. Nuclear power plants get heat from splitting atoms. This is how it all goes down. This is the reactor's core, where all the craziness happens. In there is a nuclear fuel. Uranium pellets. Roughly the size of gummy bears. Imagine that these aliens with cowboy hats are uranium atoms. Pretend that my hat is a neutron. Hi. Neutrons are very sassy. The reactor releases neutrons and they smash into uranium atoms. That makes the atom unstable and it splits into two. This process is called
nuclear fission.
It releases a lot of energy and more sassy neutrons, which smash into other aliens with cowboy hats over and over and over again. That is called a chain reaction. That energy is used to heat water and create steam, which spins a turbine and voila, you have emissions-free electricity. So that's what I mean when I say nuclear energy is clean energy.
So hopefully this video didn't make you even more confused than you were before. I am a nuclear energy influencer. I know, I roll my eyes at it too sometimes. But what the hell does that even mean? Well, we have fitness influencers, mommy influencers, travel influencers, and my favorite, celery juice influencers. So I think it was about time we had nuclear energy influencers. No, but really, I create photos, memes, TikTok videos, using internet language to hack social media and get all the floating eyeballs out there to learn about something that I think matters a little bit more than teeth whitening products. Nuclear power and its role in helping address the climate crisis and energy inequality. So the reason I care about energy inequality is because I grew up in a very small town in the southernmost part of Brazil. I know most of you are thinking of this when I say Brazil, but where I'm from actually looks like this. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page here. That is kid Isabelle attending Catholic school, where she actually learned that the world was created in 6 days and evolution was just a hypothesis. But that's a whole other conversation for a different time. So growing up in Brazil, we didn't have air conditioning or central heating. We also didn't have a laundry machine or a dishwasher. So actually, don't even think I've seen my grandmother sitting down at home. She was constantly consumed by housework. Now, some of you might take these technologies for granted or think they are luxury items. But I actually think that having electricity to power things like laundry machines is essential for human well-being, economic development, and female empowerment. See, before having all these technologies, women's destiny was basically to spend their lives cleaning dishes or clothes. By the way, have you ever hand washed bed sheets, especially white bed sheets, then carry them out and hang them to dry? I swear it's going to be one of the top 3 hardest workouts in the world. But seriously though, it's well known that people who live in countries that consume more energy have a higher quality of life. They also have more free time because they're not doing boring stuff like hand washing bed sheets. Free time they can now use to learn something new or start a business or everyone's favorite hobby, fight on Twitter. See, that's called progress, guys. So that's why, to me, the question of energy inequality around the world is a personal issue. It's actually crazy to think that just because of luck, some people are born in countries that provide them with what they need to flourish, while others are condemned to a life of hardship. But as most of us here are aware, there's a big problem. Right now, energy consumption means more air pollution and CO2 emissions, because most of the world still burns fossil fuels for energy. And we all know, unless there is a climate change denier in the audience, which maybe you're in the wrong place, but we all know that more CO2 in our atmosphere is increasing the planet's temperature and causing climate change. Now, I'm a millennial. That's an avocado toast reference for those who didn't get it. And climate change has been very much the topic of my generation. So I have always been aware of it as a problem, but never in a million years I thought I would personally participate in the conversation. That was like something for the adults in the room to figure out. That was until 2019. I remember thinking that 2019 was a really depressing year. Of course, 2020 then came along and it was a whole other level of depressing, but there were some pretty bad things that happened back then. For example, some of you might remember the devastating fires in Australia and in the Amazon in the second half of the year. Those fires were a wake-up call to me. And just to be clear, I'm fully aware that it's basically impossible to trace individual fires back to climate change, but we do know they're increasing in frequency just because of it. So seeing these fires ravage through people's homes, killing animals and people, did what decades of data, charts, and warnings couldn't. They made me incredibly sad, but even more than that, they made me want to use my voice, platform, and creative skills to focus on solutions to climate change. But out of all the other clean energy options out there, and for sure some way less controversial ones, why did I choose to focus on nuclear? It's not random. I chose it precisely because it's one of the solutions people seem not to want to talk about. See, if I was to start promoting solar, the impact I would have would be minimal because pretty much everybody loves solar, except for nuclear bros, of course. So I would be investing all this time and energy on promoting something that doesn't need much help being promoted to begin with. Nuclear, on the other hand, needs some heavy lifting. So the chances of someone like me actually being able to change the conversation were much higher. Now, a lot of people are curious as to how I even got interested in nuclear in the first place. Well, in 2015, I was lucky to randomly come across a tweet by NASA scientist and overall badass woman, Carolyn Porco, who I followed for many years on social media. She tweeted something about molten salt thorium reactors. And of course, my immediate reaction was, what the hell is that? But then I got super curious about it. But to be honest, back then, I didn't have the knowledge necessary to understand even how nuclear power plants worked, much less how a molten salt thorium reactor worked. But it piqued my curiosity, and in the following years, every time I met a scientist or engineer or any smart person really, I asked about molten salt thorium reactors. Needless to say, I got a lot of weird looks and confused looks, but most people had never heard of them. But what was surprising was that almost everyone seemed to agree, behind closed doors at least, that nuclear power was not only safe, it was actually necessary to solve climate change. So fast forward, and we're back at 2019 when I was feeling depressed about the state of the world, but eager to do something about it. I knew I didn't just want to raise awareness about climate change. My motto in life is to focus on promoting solutions, not problems. So I started reading into what it would actually take to solve climate change. After reading tons of books, watching lectures, and asking experts, it became super clear that nuclear has to be a part of the solution. But as you all might know, there is just a very, very small, tiny problem. Yeah, most people are not big fans of nuclear. And to be fair, if all you knew about it were the accidents headlines or anything you learned from pop culture, you probably would hate it as well. So there I was, seeing this huge divide between the experts and the general public's opinion on this topic, and not a single sign that things were changing. So I saw this super clear opportunity for someone like me, who was not an engineer or a scientist, to come along and share information about nuclear power in a way that was compelling and was interesting to people who usually would never think about it. So I asked myself, how could I overcome decades of anti-nuclear sentiment? But even harder than that, how could I make content about nuclear power that was captivating, interesting, and of course, educational? Where to distribute my content was super clear from the beginning: social media. In my day job, I am a fashion model, and for that reason, I already had a platform on Instagram, and I knew that I could use that to at least start the conversation. So Instagram alone has 150 million users in the US. TikTok has 80 million daily users. And of course, there's Twitter, Snapchat, and Facebook. I don't even know who uses Facebook at this time, but people still do. I actually used to be a social media hater. When Instagram became a thing, I resisted joining it for many, many years, thinking it was stupid and a waste of time, and that soon enough, people would stop using it. Until the day I realized that as much as I hated it, everybody was using it. And as a model, I would either have to embrace technology or become obsolete. So now I have totally reframed social media as maybe one of the most powerful ways to share ideas, art, or anything you want to share with the world, really. Social media platforms are all free. I mean, they're collecting your data, but they're free and accessible to everyone with an internet connection. So I really can't stress enough to you guys how important it is that anyone who has something important to say should be using these incredible tools. If you think about it, there is a whole generation of people who spend a big portion of their time on these platforms. We can have a debate all day long about whether that's a good or bad thing, but regardless of what we think, people do spend a lot of time on it. So why not use it for something good? It seemed obvious to me that the best way to ensure my message was being received widely was through leveraging these existing channels. But with so much content available at all times, how could I make something that caught people's attentions? That's when it clicked for me. I had to become a nuclear energy influencer, leveraging the types of content people already gravitate towards, and find a way to talk about nuclear power instead. So I started researching the types of videos and images that people like and expect from somebody like me. Some of the top types of content are makeup tutorials, what I eat in a day videos, selfies, and outfit of the day photos. But if it was just myself wearing jeans and a t-shirt, it would be hard to differentiate between me and the hundreds of thousands of other influencers out there. So drawing inspiration from digital influencer Little Michaela, yes, on the left is not a real person, it's a computer-generated influencer, and my muse, musician Rosalia, I created a character that was intriguing, eye-catching, and almost alien-like. It needed to be something that stopped people on their tracks and wouldn't let them just keep scrolling. I also play with bold colors, fun fonts, and mesmerizing images. And so, Isodope was born.
Nuclear energy is clean energy. Stop shutting down nuclear plants for Christ's sake. It's carbon-free, emission-free, pollution-free electricity. If I were to get all of my life's energy from nuclear, my waste would fit inside of a soda can.
So my videos are usually about a minute long or shorter, and they might look easy to make, but it takes so much time and effort to make each one of them. I thought it would be helpful to share my creative process with you guys and share some knowledge on how to communicate effectively and in a fun way. So let's go back to that video I showed you in the beginning. For this specific video, I was hopping on a TikTok trending hashtag. Now, give me a thumbs up if you guys use social media. Give me a thumbs up if you guys use TikTok. No, not too many people. You should. I know that social media can seem very intimidating to many people, but it's super fun and it's super easy to get involved with. As I said earlier, there are millions of people watching content every day. If you have an important message to share with the world, social media is the best way to do it. For those who are not familiar with TikTok, here's a little crash course. So the algorithm will favor content that's trending, be it a hashtag, a song, or audio. So you can create videos around those and get quite a lot of views. So after you sign up for TikTok, you can go on the trending page and see what the world is up to. I'll show you a trending audio that was viral last week. So you go there on the trending page and you can see all the hashtags and sounds that are trending. And this is one of them. The one problem with TikTok, I swear, is that these songs are going to be stuck in your head for a week. But back to my video, the trending hashtag at the time was plants. And there were millions of people sharing photos or videos of their houseplants. So I thought it would be funny to start by showing a plant and then proceed to talk about even better plants, nuclear power plants. So this is what my creative process looks like. It starts with an idea, and this depends on many things. It could just be that I want to tell people about the density of uranium, like in this video.
Hey guys, so a lot of you have been asking about my diet. I start my day by drinking pure black coffee. Then I usually work out for about an hour or so. After working out, I eat something a little bit unusual, gummy bears, roughly the size of uranium pellets. Uranium pellets are the fuel used in nuclear power plants. And just like gummy bears, they're super dense, which just means they're small but have a lot of energy inside. One uranium pellet, roughly the size of a gummy bear, okay, you get it by now, has as much energy as 149 gallons of oil, 2,000 pounds of coal, or 12,000 Big Macs. With one of these tiny little things, we can power a house for about 2.5 months. That's unless you're being a total idiot, leaving all your lights on while binge watching Netflix, blow drying your hair, and using a blender. This means that we can create an insane amount of energy in smaller spaces, which requires less land, which is great news for the environment. It also means that the waste it creates is tiny. If I were to get all of my life's energy from nuclear, my waste would fit inside of a soda can. Ew. Don't ever drink soda. Sugar's like really bad for you.
Or I could just want to talk about a recent event, like the Taishan nuclear power plant.
Here's an update on Taishan. The government just confirmed that it was damaged to fuel rods. But what does that mean? Remember the uranium pellets we talked about? This is how they go inside of the reactor. They're stacked up inside of a metal cladding. In nuclear power plants, the uranium atoms undergo fission, meaning they split into smaller atoms. One of the byproducts of this process is a noble gas called xenon. Sounds scarier than it is. Sometimes those uranium pellets get so hot that they crack a little bit. And stuff like xenon can leak out of the fuel rods. That doesn't mean that it's leaking outside of the plant and into the environment. It's just leaking into the reactor's core. But how dangerous is it? Me. If there's too much buildup of this gas, they'll shut the reactor down and fix the problem. But in this case, it seems to be under control.
Or I could just be jumping on a trending sound, like this one of Cardi B saying she doesn't have time to do anything because she just works every day.
I don't even have time for my love life, to see my family. I don't even have time for nothing. I'm working every single day. I'm depressed.
So the second step for my more elaborate videos, the longer ones that I showed you, is to write a script. This process is one of the longest ones and takes many, many hours. Remember, things have to be educational, but also funny. Otherwise, I would just bore people to death. Hopefully not what I'm doing to you guys right now. Also, keep in mind that I'm not an expert, and so there's a lot of research that goes into this stage. I'm going to take you now behind the scenes. I've never shown this to anybody. This was the first draft for the nuclear energy is clean energy video I showed you in the beginning. So I'm going to just read it to you. Nuclear energy is clean energy. But isn't nuclear like really bad for you? I'll show you what I mean by that. This is a plant. No, not this one. This one. What happens inside of this thing is pretty crazy. But like how crazy? Pretty crazy. Let's go inside of the reactor core where all the craziness happens. Right there in the middle are the fuel rods. These rods carry nuclear fuel, uranium pellets. Each pellet is almost the size of a gummy bear. But don't eat this gummy bear because that would not be very good. Now you have to zoom in all the way to the atomic level. Those uranium gummy bears have uranium-235 atoms. Imagine that these aliens wearing cowboy hats are U-235. And this is what happens. Pretend that I'm a neutron. Hi, neutrons are very sassy. Now these neutrons move really fast and smash into the alien with a cowboy hat, aka U-235. And that makes the alien unstable. It begins drinking and ghosting you. Just kidding, it splits into two. This process is called nuclear fission. It releases more sassy neutrons, which then smash into other aliens with cowboy hats over and over again. That's called a chain reaction. All this madness generates a lot of heat, which heats up water inside of the reactor, which turns into steam, which spins a turbine, and va, beep, la, you have electricity. What? So in reality, a nuclear reactor is basically just a giant tea kettle, but instead of burning stuff to heat up the water, it splits atoms and uses that energy. This whole shenanigan doesn't emit CO2 or other greenhouse gases, so nuclear energy is clean energy. As you can see, it was quite long and had a lot of details. So the goal for this video was to explain why nuclear energy is clean energy and how a nuclear power plant makes electricity, all in 1 minute, no pressure. The most important thing is knowing who your audience is. In my case, my goal from the beginning was to communicate with females, since historically, women have been opposed to nuclear power. I also wanted to reach younger audiences, since their lives and the lives of their children will be heavily impacted by climate change. My audience is also mostly people who don't know anything about nuclear energy, so adding too many details might confuse them and take away from the bigger message. So I decided to make the script a lot simpler. Even small things, such as not mentioning fuel rods, since most people don't know what those even are. Generally, if you say words or terms without explaining them, people will just tune off. They'll think that what you're trying to say is too hard to understand or not for them. So the less terminology you can use, the better. I also chose to illustrate the size of uranium pellets, since most people have no idea. I chose gummy bears because they're roughly the size of uranium pellets, but also because most people have come across them, and because you would never associate uranium pellets with something like gummy bears, so it's funny and interesting. Another example is I decided to just say uranium atoms instead of U-235. I understand some of you guys may be hurting inside right now. I know the precise way to communicate nuclear fission would include U-235, but sometimes to communicate effectively, we can't be 100% precise. Remember, know your audience. It's also helpful to run whatever you're trying to say by non-experts, like your friends or family members who are not super familiar with the issue, to see if they can understand it. So when I'm relatively happy with the script, I go ahead and start filming it. But usually without doing my makeup and putting on crazy outfits, because this will most definitely not be the final take. I usually take as many as 10 takes before the final. I then start editing the video, and this is when the longest part begins. Editing videos is truly an art form. I edit mine on a software called Final Cut Pro, in case any of you guys are interested. And since my videos are for TikTok, which until recently only allowed 1-minute videos, actually now you can make up to 3 minutes, but I think 3 minutes is kind of too long. People don't have the attention span. So I have learned a few tricks to make my videos more compelling, and I'll share that with you guys. So have a hook in the beginning. The first 3 seconds are maybe the most important ones. You have to make sure to catch people's interest immediately. Otherwise, they'll just keep scrolling. You can do that through a few different ways. You can start with a question. People can't stand not knowing the answer to a question once you present it to them. You can also make it visually interesting, either through beautiful images or beautiful and interesting sounds. Second thing is, don't be afraid to be weird. Sometimes people comment on my videos saying they are too weird, but trust me, it's better to be weird than to be boring. People will watch and rewatch and share weird. They will not watch boring. You can also change angles often. I try to change angles in my videos as often as every 3 seconds. You can do that by just changing the direction of the camera or of your face. Make sure you have good light. I've seen so many videos with bad light, and this is so easy to do. Videos that look dark are not compelling at all. And also the algorithm doesn't like them, so it won't show to too many people. Also make sure the sound is good. It doesn't have to come from a fancy microphone or anything like that, but just make sure the sound is clear. There are no sirens or loud background noises. And finally, experiment. I've done many types of videos, and some of them were total failures, but you won't know what works until you try everything. So I want to make sure that I'm telling you guys that I edit my videos in a way that's super compelling, but I do want to emphasize that not everyone does this or has to. For example, the red guy on TikTok is a health physicist who specializes in emergency preparedness and response for radiation emergencies. And he makes more normal videos like this.
So transporting radioactive material and nuclear fuel is one of the most highly regulated hazardous materials out there, and it has the best safety record. I actually get to train the hazmat teams on what they're supposed to do if they come upon radioactive material in a transportation accident. And a well-informed hazmat team member will tell you that they'll take a radiological hazard over a biological or chemical one any day. In order for a hazmat team member to know how to respond to a hazardous material accident, they use an ERG, or Emergency Response Guidebook. If you look at every single page that mentions radiological incidents, it always tells you to prioritize life safety and other hazards before dealing with radiation. That's because the highly radioactive containers they've dropped, they've lit on fire, they've submerged, they've hit it with trains, and they've even launched missiles at it. And it survived all the tests.
So this video got 352,000 views on TikTok. So now 352,000 people have learned that nuclear waste is transported in a very safe way, contrary to popular belief. I think that's really cool. Another very important part of creating my videos is making sure I'm using accurate information. This is when experts and people like you guys come into my life. I rely on many different people to fact check all my content and provide me with good data. I usually also only use information that is readily available and can be checked in multiple different legitimate sources. But sometimes it's hard to find something, or the data is a little bit murky. So in that case, I collaborate with different experts to actually come up with it. For example, for my upcoming video about nuclear waste, I wanted to compare the amount of waste each form of energy production creates. I reached out to several nuclear engineers to help me with these calculations, and they all came back with pretty similar results. But there was just one problem. I wanted to talk about all different forms of energy, including solar and wind. But none of them were experts in renewable energy. So I thought it would be fair to reach out to someone who was one to help me with the numbers for solar panels and wind turbines. Because quite frankly, we would all appreciate if these folks reached out to nuclear experts when talking about nuclear energy. So I started a conversation with a guy who's known in the nuclear community for criticizing numbers nuclear advocates put out. He's a very rigorous person and has been right about most things he has critiqued. So I thought to myself, he will scrutinize my calculations as soon as I put my content out, so I might as well just do it before to ensure I'm not spreading bad information. He agreed to it, and we started a weekly call between the two of us and the nuclear engineer. We worked through a bunch of numbers and have disagreed many, many times. And to be honest, we still haven't finished all of them since life kind of got in the way. But I think there's a lesson there in that collaboration. We all learned from each other and changed our perspectives after doing due diligence and going through all the latest data. And honestly, I'm so glad I chose to do this since my initial numbers would have been a little bit off. I think we all benefit from communicating with people who appear to be on the other side. We might learn from them, they might learn from us, and we're all better off just sharing accurate information. So here are some things I have learned when it comes on to how to communicate. The big don'ts. Don't be dismissive of people's fears and emotions. Without being able to compare different types of energy sources, most people don't know that nuclear is one of the safest. So the only thing they think about are the accidents. Don't be dismissive of their emotions. That has literally never changed minds. Understand where people are coming from and communicate in an empathetic way. Don't focus on bashing other sources of clean energy. Guys, seriously, we are on a race to decarbonize. Sure, solar and wind are not perfect and certainly cannot decarbonize a grid alone, and it's fine to point that out, but to make that the core of your message is a waste of time and only creates more division. Solar and wind are cheap, are being deployed right now, and can certainly help replace fossil fuels. Also, don't try to force your view on others. Some people will never change their minds about nuclear. Make your best case with kindness and empathy, and if the person is still against it, just move on. Don't waste your time trying to convince people who don't want to change their minds. It's not going to happen. Now for the do's, talk like a normal person. This goes back to the idea of simplicity. The more we can use real life examples and communicate in a simple way, the higher the chances people will be receptive to your message and interested in what you have to say. Also be fun. When somebody's watching or reading your content, you're literally living inside of their head for a little bit. Make sure they want you to be there and are not just looking forward to when you're done talking. Make jokes, use pop culture references or funny images. Also always show people why what you're saying matters. Like the density of uranium means nothing to most people. But the fact that because of it, you need to mine less materials and can create more energy in smaller spaces, which means it doesn't require a lot of land, does matter. So always explain why things are beneficial to people's lives. Always engage with curiosity and empathy. Don't shut people down immediately if they disagree with you, unless they're trolls, of course. I literally just block the trolls. Sometimes it can be hard to know who's a troll or who's just trying to have a civil debate. So just my opinion is if they name call you or repeatedly imply you have ulterior motives or are being funded by the industry, just block them. That's what I do, at least, since they're not actually interested in having a conversation. Also, less is more. Don't share too many different facts or numbers all at once. For my videos, I usually just focus on making a statement and then using examples to keep reinforcing that statement. For example, in my What I Eat in a Day video, it was all about the density of uranium. So I just made that statement and kept proving it. Also, criticize wrongdoings in your own community. Nothing creates more distrust, in my opinion, than blind tribalism. The nuclear industry has done some wrong things, and we should be able to point this out and push for change. This doesn't mean that only the nuclear industry has done wrong things. It just means that you want it to be better. Now, I thought it would be helpful to share some examples of social media interactions and show how I respond to each one of them. So this one was a comment on, I think was TikTok. So this person says, laughing my ass off, yeah, and where do you want to store all that toxic waste that has a half-life of 1,000,000 years? Honestly, I did not respond to this comment, but if I were to, because there are a lot of comments about nuclear waste, a lot of people ask questions, I would have said something about Oklo. I love bringing up Oklo, the natural nuclear reactors in Africa, because they're the perfect example of, we know what happens to nuclear waste after a long time. This other person said, are you qualified to speak about nuclear science or just drumming up the likes? This was a little bit of a sassy comment, but I decided to engage with it on that day for some reason. And I said, you can watch my content, fact check everything and make that decision for yourself. I don't think this person was going to fact check everything, but you know what? They might have done a research and they might have learned a thing or two about nuclear power. So it's a win. This is kind of like me reading meme tweets. This other person said, I think people are just really scared after Fukushima, which is understandable. Like the hazards, although rare, are particularly horrific. This is a perfect example of somebody bringing up the accidents. And I don't think it's helpful to just say, well, you know, nobody died from radiation from Fukushima. Like people, it just seems a little too aggressive. I think we have to acknowledge that accidents are really scary. In this case, I chose to say, agree, nuclear accidents are scary. Thankfully, very rare. Those floods and fires every other day, though. Just highlighting the fact that, you know, nuclear accidents, although scary, are very rare. But the effects of climate change are impacting everyone and are happening almost every other day now, it seems like. This person said, can you please explain how do you eliminate the radioactive waste? Because yes, it is clean, but the waste created by it. So I chose this comment because it's the perfect example of someone who is genuinely curious and wants to learn more. So I said, if the waste is managed properly, it isn't an issue at all. If disposed of underground in certain types of rocks, it will just stay there decaying away, which is true. If I had more characters, because TikTok has a limit on characters, I would have added, again, the Oklo natural nuclear reactors in Africa, because I think they're a great example. This person said, no, solar is the way forward. This is a great moment to just bring, you know, just to communicate that we need all of it, because we actually do. We need more solar, we need more wind, we need more hydro, geothermal. Some people like biomass. I'm not a big fan of biomass. And we need more nuclear. So yes, we need all of it. Love solar too. And then this person said, there is no climate crisis. Flooding is a construction urbanization consequence, and it has decreased with better planning. To be honest, I did not respond to this because what can I say to someone who thinks there is no climate crisis? I mean, sure, construction and urbanization help make cities more resilient to floodings and fires and stuff like that, but we know that climate change is definitely increasing the frequency of these events. So, in a nutshell, guys, really use social media. Again, there are millions of people out there eager to learn and watch interesting content all day long. Really take advantage of that. Don't be afraid to experiment with different types of content. Make sure you're putting good information out into the world. I think we're all aware that there's way too many fake news out there, and we got to make sure we're not contributing to it. If your information can be easily verified or doesn't have credible sources, don't use it. Be kind when talking to people. Assume they have the best intentions, just like you do. Block the trolls. I know this might seem to contradict my last point, but sometimes people just want to be rude or mean to you. And if that's the case, just block them. Your life will be a lot better. Talk to people who you think are on the other side. Most of the time, you'll find they are on the same side. They just have a different view on how to accomplish that same goal, and that's totally fine. It's okay to disagree. And lastly, have fun. because, well, we might be in a simulation, but also just life in general is way too short to not have fun. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Isabelle. That was amazing. I got so much to learn about TikTok because I'm just a user who kind of scrolls short
no.
attention span. But we got some questions in the chat, and also we got some questions in Instagram. So I will start with the most interesting ones.
Sure.
So first of all, is Isodope all about fission, or you also want to promote fusion as a future kind of interesting energy?
Yeah, well, I love fusion, and I think the problem with fusion, as we all know, is that it's always a decade away. I think it's a super promising technology, and I believe that we will get there someday. But right now, because of the urgency of climate change, Isodope is all about fission right at this moment. But I am planning on doing a video on fusion and would love to talk more about it.
Okay, sounds good. Another question is basically a request or ask. Could you please target a German audience and show them the benefits of nuclear? I mean, I'm begging you to.
Germans are complicated, and I say that as a German descendant with all the love in my heart. But I think they have a very heavy emotional baggage. They're extremely against nuclear power, as we all know. I would love to engage more with them. I don't know how. I don't know. I haven't cracked that market. I don't know if I need to speak German, or if I need to maybe find someone in Germany who is doing similar work and collaborate with them. But yes, I would love to. I think that Germany, as we all know, also affects all the countries in Europe around it in terms of policy and what technologies they're choosing. So it would be great to do a big campaign in Germany for sure.
Exactly. Another question is, where do you see the nuclear influencer movement going? Anything in real life?
Oh, yes. I think I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, now just because of the pandemic, everything has been online, but I do plan on, attending events in the future in real life. I also plan on doing a protest. So everybody, keep your eyes out there. As you all know, I work to save Diablo Canyon. I think we should be working to save all nuclear power plants, but just because I am in California, I specifically focus on Diablo Canyon, and I am planning a protest. So, this is the thing with a lot of nuclear advocacy. I think that people have struggled in the past to move beyond our computers. We're all very passionate on social media, and we're all out there advocating, but when it comes to showing up in real life and attending protests, it's been a little harder to accomplish. So I think this is the moment to go out there and show people that we support this technology.
Great, thank you. So we have so many questions in the chat now.
Okay.
So first of all, first question is, do you have any plans to collaborate with Susie Baker and Jessica Lovering on creating a narrative for new nuclear industry?
I mean, I'm certainly in touch with them. We've had calls in the past, and we're all open to collaborating whenever it makes sense. I think they're super busy doing very important work, but I would love to collaborate with them in the future on promoting advanced nuclear.
Another one, interesting one. Do you happen to have something to do with Elon Musk's recent positive comments toward nuclear?
Wow. I don't think so. I have certainly talked to him about it, but I think his view on nuclear has always been positive. Maybe he has realized recently that we need it, we truly need it to decarbonize, but no, I don't think so.
Okay. Interesting one. How do you integrate your personal narrative into your character?
Oh, that's interesting. I think, again, whenever I talk about energy inequality, that comes up, because I have firsthand experience of living a lower energy life than people in the United States. So that's when it shows more. But in terms of my character, I think there are elements of my personality and myself in it. You know, sometimes when people talk to me in real life or even over Zoom, and I'll do like a sassy face or a hand gesture, they're like, oh, I saw a little bit of Isodope there. I'm like, well, it comes from me. So there's definitely a little part of me. But in terms of my story, I think it's mostly related to, the energy inequality issue.
Okay. Also, how have you been received by other climate influencers online?
I think it's a mix. It's a mix. Some people are super receptive, and some people have reached out to me to say that they've changed their minds on nuclear, which is amazing, or at least like have an open mind, whereas before they were definitely against. And some people are just, again, have that emotional baggage, right? I feel like with younger audiences, it's generally positive just because, like I said, you know, I'm a millennial and we grew up with climate change being the issue of our generation. So we don't have that much of a baggage with nuclear power. But in older generations, it's definitely much harder because you have to understand these are people who grew up with fears of nuclear war. And they conflate nuclear energy with nuclear weapons. And so in their minds, they can't make the distinction, and they think that one always leads to the other. So I think, to answer the question again, I think other climate advocates and other influencers in the space, especially younger, have been very receptive to the message.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We also promoted Eric to ask his question because Eric does a lot of work on outreach and leads Generation Atomic. So I think it's going to be a good question.
Hi, Eric.
Eric Mayer, we want to hear your question.
Hey, sorry about that. It's just like figuring out how to join as a panel. There we go. All right, had to click the buttons there. Great presentation. Loved it. Thank you so much. So I was trying to hit you with a hard question here. See if I could stump you. I think one of the hardest topics for me, and one of the ones I encounter the most, is certainly at the climate talks and venues where there are a lot of other climate activists who maybe don't like nuclear. One of the key reasons they cite is the legacy of nuclear weapons, of uranium mining in particular. Actually, they don't actually usually draw the distinction between mining for nuclear weapons and for nuclear power, and it's just the idea that nuclear energy is bad for indigenous people. Yeah. And just wondering how you might respond to that.
Yeah, so that's a question that I don't know if it has always been the case, but I get that question now all the time. I feel like it's more present in the narrative. And I think that, again, it goes back to like being empathetic and understanding where people are coming from. Just saying like, oh yeah, no, this was done for nuclear weapons. Nuclear energy has nothing to do with it. And the person who opened my eyes to this was Katie Mama, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. And she says, sure, they were mined in the beginning for nuclear weapons, but the nuclear energy industry did benefit from that mining. So I'm sure there was uranium that was mined from indigenous lands that ended up being used in reactors. So I think the way I go about it, to be honest, is just acknowledging that it was terrible, and not try to minimize it and say like, hey, listen, yes, unfortunately, at the time, the technology was, super new and people were mining it in a way that was terrible. And that legacy is a very dark legacy, and it's something that the nuclear industry has to grapple with. Like, there is no way to escape it. And then if the conversation leads there, I always like to point out that unfortunately, mining has a lot of terrible impacts, mining everything, right? Like, a lot of people are not aware that lithium mining has impacts on indigenous communities in Latin America. Same goes for, all the other things that are needed for renewables and batteries as well. But I only talk about that when it makes sense, when the conversation gets there, because I also don't want to use that as like, oh yeah, that was, that was done many, many years ago and it's not an issue anymore. But look at, these guys are doing it wrong. I think it has to be talked in a very delicate way. And again, acknowledging that it was terrible and it was wrong. Like always making sure you say because it was. And like the only way to move forward, I think, is with forgiveness and by the nuclear industry coming together to do something to, fix that problem, which is, by the way, I'm sure you all know as well, it's still a problem. There are still hundreds of abandoned uranium mines in Navajo Nation to this day. So that's another thing I would like to see is for the whole industry to come together and find a way to, ask for forgiveness and find a way to help improve that situation.
That's a good approach. Yeah. Okay. More comments and questions. As a video idea, it will be funny if you had a villain as a gas or oil fighting with you for climate change.
That would be too easy. I would just make like a Godzilla style atomic fire coming out of my mouth and just like knocking everybody down. That's a good idea though.
Yeah. Do you plan to have or create long-term entertaining educational content on YouTube? I think you have YouTube videos, right?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel, but I mostly have been focusing on TikTok just because that's where most people are, honestly, nowadays. But I do plan on expanding into YouTube, but it's a whole different thing, right? These are like 10-minute long videos. I'm not sure that my style of videos and editing would go well for 10 minutes. I think it might be seizure inducing. People are like, wow, what did I just watch for 10 minutes? But I am exploring it. So if you guys have ideas, I would love to hear ideas for cool long format videos, but it's definitely one of my goals.
And for fact checking, Christine King volunteered to provide you fact checking for your videos.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Next question is from Jack. Love the content. You definitely gained a new follower. I was wondering, in the world of social media, how do you not let the negativity get to you? I can see where blocking the troll helps, but how do you avoid getting in that negative headspace?
That's a really good question. So I get hate every day. I just want to put this out there. One way or the other, every post I make, especially about nuclear energy, I'll get some hateful comments. I think you end up like growing a thick skin. But I think what the most helpful thing is to be really passionate about your mission and knowing that what you're doing will have a positive impact in the world. So because I have that, because I know that what I'm doing is right, and because it's my mission right now, the negative comments don't impact you as much, and again, you have to be able to differentiate between negative comments, negative/curious comments, like, oh, this person is actually trying to learn something from me, so I will engage, and negative, hateful comments, because to be honest, for somebody to spend their time going on your video and commenting something shitty, they have to be in a really bad mood and they have to be unhappy. So I kind of feel bad for them because they're probably not happy with their lives. But I think you have to go through the exercise of like putting yourself out there, receiving the negative comments and getting used to it, and just trusting your mission and trusting and knowing why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay. The next question is, do you have any plan or content ideas to talk about at the conference on climate change, COP26?
To create content for it specifically?
Climate change conference, I guess so. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe you want to talk there.
I have so many things I'm working on that I haven't even thought that far out, but I should definitely be planning something like that. Yeah, I think that's a great audience to engage with, although I'm not sure they're super welcoming to nuclear power. I haven't heard too many good things, but we can always try. I would be happy to do something.
Okay, another one. boomers grew up in an area of corporate distrust, and nuclear was seen as a big corporate and big government and not to be trusted. Renewables are seen as a low and more local control. Can social media approaches help people feel that they have a voice in the decision making? That's a good one.
That's a really good question. I think it can, and if it's done in the right way, especially if the new technologies are done in the right way. And I think that's where, good energy collectives work comes in that they're trying to do exactly that, like try to make sure that whenever these new reactors are built, they have the buy-in from the communities, and the community members have a say, and it's their choice. So I think whenever we get there to that point, I think it will be super important to emphasize that this technology can really only move forward if people feel like they have a say in it, and if they feel like it's a part of their community.
Sounds good. Yeah. We have a couple more. Have you considered partnering with some folks in cryptocurrency world to promote nuclear as a source of clean energy for cryptocurrency mining?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when all the issues around cryptocurrency mining came up earlier this year, I was the first one to jump on that train. I was like, because I saw how perfect nuclear energy was for cryptocurrency mining, right? Because the computers, they need to be on 24/7 to mine crypto. And so using renewables might not be, maybe renewables with batteries, yes, but with just solar or wind, it might not be the best option. So I saw nuclear as being the perfect partner to crypto. I have actually, not to brag, but I have connected the folks from Oklo with some crypto mining folks, and they actually made a deal. I'm sure most of you saw it, to use Oklo reactors to power crypto mining centers. So I think that's a big opportunity for nuclear energy, and I know a lot of people in the nuclear energy space don't like crypto so much, or I've come across a lot of folks. But I think that, listen, my opinion, I like cryptocurrencies because I think as we're moving more and more towards the digital world, it makes sense to have a digital currency, but I don't have any special feelings towards it. But the fact is that people are using it, and people will continue using that technology. So how can we find a way to make sure they're using clean energy, and especially to make sure they're using nuclear? So I think that cryptocurrency mining might actually spark this new revolution in nuclear power plants, especially for advanced reactors.
So now we know who is behind that deal. Another question from the audience. What's the best way we can engage with your posts? Likes, comments, shares?
Honestly, all of it helps. Comments help a lot, because whenever you comment, the algorithm picks up that your post, that people are interacting with your post. So all of it, honestly, as many comments as you can leave, as many comments as you can tell your friends to leave, all of that helps. And by the way, thank you so much, guys. Honestly, I came into the scene, not too long ago, out of the blue, and I started posting these weird videos, and you have been so welcoming and receptive, and you've engaged with my content. And I don't know, it was a risk, I took a risk, and I could have not been well received by people in that environment, but you have all been so nice and so graceful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I guess the last question, and that question actually attributed to all to the voices of all engineers. Why do you think people are so restrained in their speech or on social media? And how can we actually, I will add it myself, how can we actually cross that barrier of speaking publicly on social media?
I think that it's scary for everyone. It's scary for me too. Before this presentation, I was like shaking and my hands are cold. And every time I put a video out, I'm like, oh my God, is it going to do well? It's like, are people going to like it? It's a lot to put yourself out there, right? And especially if you're making videos, it's so overwhelming and it's so intimidating. But again, this is an important message. And I think that right now, if you guys are not out there putting this message, other people are, and this might be people who, you know, are putting wrong information about nuclear power, or people who are anti and just running anti-nuclear campaigns. So I say, you know, I see your fear, but you have to do it. You have to do it because the mission is more important than our fears.
That's a great conclusion, I think. And we are at time.
Perfect
Thank you
timing.
so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for all the questions.
Oh, one more
okay.
thing. I actually want to gift everyone Zoom backgrounds, Isodope Zoom backgrounds. So I'll drop the link on the chat, and you guys can use your Isodope backgrounds.
Yay.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Bye.
Nice job, Denara.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
That was
God. Wow.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we need to do a reprise of this, I think. I think this one and the pitch practice. We should do them
Yes.
again.
Well, somebody asked about recordings, but we can revisit that next week. All right, I'm going to close her out. Everybody okay?
Yes, thank you so much, Sue, for all your help.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. All right, you guys
all
take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Dropbox link, elect permissions. Not sure what that means. They can send out this link.